She
Is
had
this
trained her
all the
whole life to
resistance
be
your kind
unbeatable.
can muster?
Her green skin
Pathetic!
glistened under twin
Draw
suns,
your weapon
her
and
long
face me
ears
if you
flicking with
dare.
absolute
Is
certainty,
this all the
until a
resistance
single
your kind
human
can
grinned,
muster?
tripped over a
Pathetic!
crate, and turned her
Draw
perfect
your
plan
weapon
into
and
chaos.
face me if you
The
dare.
twin suns hovered over the jagged horizon of Caro's 9, casting long, thin shadows across the rust-colored sand. The colony's structures, half buried in dust and half assembled in chaotic haste, seemed almost alive in the heat's shimmer, bending and twisting as if to mock the intruder approaching with deliberate steps. Her green skin gleamed like polished jade, muscles coiled and fluid beneath the thin combat suit that left no room for weakness. Black hair fell like ink over her shoulders, swaying slightly with each confident step, and her long ears flicked at every faint sound, signaling anticipation, caution, and just the faintest trace of arrogance. She was the warrior everyone spoke about across the quadrant, fast, precise, and lethal. Today, she had come to demonstrate that again. "Defeating you will take no time," she said, the words sliding from her lips with an air of inevitability, as though stating the future aloud made it unchangeable. Her voice carried across the open expanse, and for a brief moment, the wind seemed to pause, as if the desert itself held its breath. The human opponent looked up from where he was crouched behind a dilapidated hover cart, scratched and dented from a dozen mining operations. He was, on first glance, unimpressive, scruffy hair sticking out at odd angles, suit patched in ways that suggested a lifetime of improvisation rather than planning, and boots that had clearly seen better centuries. Yet there was a light in his eyes that suggested calculation, and a grin tugged at his lips, not one of fear but of amusement. "Nice confidence," he called out. "Hope it's contagious because I left mine at breakfast." The warrior blinked, a flicker of confusion passing through her sharp features. Then she lunged. The desert seemed to bend with her movement, a blur of green and black as she drew her energy blade. The light from the blade caught the sand in a dance of sparks, slicing through it as though the air itself resisted. She expected the human to fall back, to falter, perhaps even scream. Yet he ducked, rolled, and somehow ended up under a hovering pile of crates that clattered loudly. "Was that intentional?" she asked, circling him, ears twitching with irritation and surprise. He popped out from behind the crates, hair dusted with sand, a smirk on his face. "Mostly," he said. "Also, I think I hit a sand scorpion. Hope it doesn't hold a grudge." He waved at a small dust cloud scuttling away. The warrior paused, the first real hesitation cracking her confidence. This human, fragile, unassuming, and ridiculous, was moving in ways she did not anticipate. Her strikes, calculated and deadly, were met with improvised counters. A swift kick to his midsection was sidestepped with an almost absurd spin that sent him stumbling past a pile of discarded machinery, yet somehow landing upright, pointing a finger at her like a gunslinger in an old Holovid. "Seriously?" she hissed, swiping her blade in a horizontal arc that she expected would carve him in half. Instead, he tripped over a cable sticking out from the ground, fell forward, and used the momentum to grab a crate, slamming it toward her feet in an almost cartoonish block. Sparks flew as the edge of her blade bounced off metal. He stood, brushing sand from his jacket, grinning. "You really need a new instructor," he said, voice teasing. "This one's letting you get lazy." She narrowed her eyes. Green skin flushed, not with embarrassment but with the first inkling of genuine frustration. The fight was supposed to be swift, decisive, glorious. Not this. Not a strange mix of ballet, slapstick, and human stubbornness. She lunged again, faster this time, blade streaking with lethal intent, but the human ducked, rolled, and used the momentum to kick up a pile of sand that swirled around her legs. She stumbled, catching herself on a crate that nearly tipped over, and for the first time she let a short laugh escape, sharp and incredulous. You're ridiculous," she muttered, shaking her head. "And yet effective," he said with a shrug. "Think of me as human improvisation, deluxe edition." She lashed out with a spinning strike, intended to end the duel, and the human dodged in a way that would have been elegant if it weren't for the fact that he tripped over a loose panel and tumbled across the sand, ending up face down. For a long second, she thought it was over. But then he popped up, hair dusted with sand, holding a reflective panel that he angled with a wink. Her energy blade's next swing caught the reflection instead of him, the light bouncing across a wall of machinery, leaving her off balance and blinking against the glare. "Seriously, humans," she growled. "Always using reflections, are you just naturally annoying?" "Evolutionary gift," he replied. "Comes with a warranty, lasts about 80 years, give or take." The desert echoed with the sound of clashing metal and whispered insults. Around them, the abandoned colony seemed almost sentient, reacting to the chaos. A hovering drone that had been patrolling for maintenance purposes veered off, buzzing in confusion, and the occasional sand scorpion peeked out of a crevice, clearly entertained by the performance. Every move she made with precision was met by ingenuity and luck in equal measure, each strike an unintentional comedy of errors, each counter a small triumph for human resilience. At one point, she attempted a feint to the left, only for him to pretend to trip in perfect timing, then spring upward and launch a small device that sent a brief electrical shock through her blade's handle. Her hair puffed from static, ears flicked in annoyance, and the device sparked like a miniature firework. "Really?" she growled. "Really? Apologies," he said cheerfully, "but I didn't want to risk you getting bored." The warrior paused, balancing on one foot, black hair sticking in sharp angles from the static, green skin glistening under the twin suns. Her pride demanded vengeance, yet her mind betrayed her. This human, small, messy, absurd, had done what no seasoned alien warrior could anticipate. Her attacks were deflected, avoided, or outright turned against her, yet he remained upright, laughing at the sheer improbability of it all. For the first time in her career, she felt something unfamiliar, doubt. And yet, despite all, the duel was far from over. Sparks flew, sand swirled, crates toppled, and the occasional scorpion fled the scene as if it could no longer bear the chaos. Humor and danger intertwined, a dizzying dance that neither could predict. Even in moments of frustration, she felt a grudging respect. The human was clever, absurdly lucky, and perhaps more than she could handle. She lunged once more, attempting to regain the momentum she felt slipping away. He rolled under her strike, grabbing a cable dangling from a partially collapsed structure, swinging himself like some kind of human pendulum. She swung again, caught herself, then stumbled onto a panel that shot her forward like a makeshift springboard. Both of them tumbled across the sand, colliding with crates and dust clouds, until finally they faced each other, panting, hair disheveled, armor scratched, energy blade humming dangerously close to a stray sand dune. He laughed, leaning on one knee, hands on his thighs, hair stuck with sand. "Honestly, I think we're both having fun." She blinked, trying to regain composure, ears flicking irritably. "Fun is not the word I would choose," she said, then paused. A smirk threatened to form despite herself. "Perhaps amusing." "Amusing," he echoed with a grin. "Exactly. Don't worry, I'll keep the jokes coming if you promise to keep looking confused. It's part of my strategy." The warrior alien's chest heaved with exertion, green skin shining, black hair sticking in chaotic strands. She had expected an easy victory, a swift demonstration of superiority, and instead she found herself facing a human who could, with a combination of luck, wit, and sheer audacity, turn her precise, lethal strikes into a dance that was as infuriating as it was effective. And somehow, she realized, somewhere deep beneath the bruises and dust, she was thrilled. She twirled her blade, sand spraying in arcs, ears flicking in annoyance and anticipation, black hair catching the sunlight. "Very well," she said, voice low and dangerous. "Let us continue, but be warned. I have not yet used my full strength." "Looking forward to it," he replied, dusting sand from his shoulders, hair more disheveled than ever, grin wide. "And hey, if you're going to be dramatic, at least make it entertaining. I've got a reputation to maintain, too." The duel continued, a storm of green, black, sparks, and laughter, the twin suns casting their relentless light over a scene of chaos, ingenuity, and improbable human resilience. As the desert of Karo's 9 bore witness to the clash of overconfidence and adaptability. And perhaps, just perhaps, to the start of a story neither combatant could have anticipated. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying a faint metallic tang, and the sound of distant machinery groaning as though the abandoned mining colony itself had sighed. The warrior alien woman adjusted her grip on the energy blade, the green of her skin glinting in the light of the twin suns, her black hair plastered to her forehead with sweat and dust. Her long ears twitched at every sound, a sensory radar honed by decades of training, yet even now, they betrayed the first hints of unease. The human she faced crouched behind the edge of a half-collapsed structure, a battered hover crate propping him up like a makeshift throne, and his grin suggested that he was enjoying every moment of her growing frustration. "You're really persistent," she muttered, sweeping the sand with a low arc of her blade. The energy pulse from the swing sent a thin wave of heat racing across the desert surface, but the human merely rolled, kicked up sand, and launched himself onto another crate. "I think you might be broken," he said, brushing dust from his jacket. "Or maybe I'm just really entertaining. Could be both." She lunged again, faster this time, and the ground beneath her feet erupted as he kicked a loose panel. Sparks flew from exposed wiring, creating a small, chaotic fireworks display. Her blade struck one of the sparks, sending a harmless but dramatic arc of electricity dancing across the air. "Entertaining is not an adjective one uses during combat," she said, voice low and sharp. "It is dangerous. Focus." "Dangerous? Sure," he replied, springing from the crate with a mock salute. "But so are you, apparently, very, very dramatic too." The warrior's eyes narrowed. She had anticipated an opponent who would strike, retreat, and strike again with precision, but this human, he improvised. Every attack she planned, every feint, every spinning strike was met with unpredictable moves, improvised traps, and sometimes, bafflingly, laughter. He dodged by rolling into piles of scrap that were clearly unstable, sending machinery clattering and dust clouds puffing. He used shadows, cables, and even the occasional distracted sand scorpion to his advantage, making her precision feel almost foolish. Frustrated, she accelerated, swinging with a series of fluid strikes meant to overwhelm him, but he anticipated none of them. Instead, he leapt into a shallow pit, sending a small dust storm in her direction that made her stumble. The wind carried the grit into her eyes, and for the briefest moment, she was blinded. She spat sand, waved her blade like a conductor of chaos, and hissed, How are you even doing this?" He emerged from the dust cloud with a grin, holding a reflective panel he had apparently scavenged from the ruins. "Didn't think of that one, did you? Mirrors are fun, and so reflective." The alien's blade met the panel, energy bouncing harmlessly away in jagged arcs, and she nearly stumbled backward from the recoil. "This is absurd," she muttered, her voice a mix of irritation and reluctant amusement. Her opponent winked. "Absurdly effective," he corrected. As the duel unfolded, the landscape became a playground of improvised strategies. He tripped over loose panels only to land on his feet with uncanny balance. He swung from dangling cables like some kind of daredevil. And when she lunged with her blade, he managed to redirect her momentum with a well-timed kick to a hovering crate, sending it spinning toward her legs. She jumped, swung, spun, and landed with precision, yet the human seemed to anticipate every move with a chaotic sort of logic that made her pause mid-strike. "You're persistent, I'll give you that," she admitted, ears flicking in slight exasperation. "But persistence will not save you from defeat. Persistence is basically my superpower," he said, rolling under a spinning strike and kicking sand into her path again. "Well, that and luck. Did I mention I've got a lifetime warranty on the luck? Comes with a free smile, too." The warrior snarled but couldn't help but notice the growing amusement twisting through her frustration. His methods were unconventional, unpredictable, almost comically clumsy, yet effective beyond reason. Every strategy she had honed to perfection against other foes was thwarted by improvisation, chance, and audacious wit. At one point, she attempted a feint, intending to lure him into a trap, but he tripped on the very trap she had set, somersaulted into a stack of crates, and somehow emerged holding a crate over his head like a trophy. "Surprise," he called out. The green of her skin flushed not with heat but with disbelief, and her ears twitched in irritation. "You're infuriating," she growled, hissing between clenched teeth. Her energy blade hummed, sending arcs of blue light racing across the sand. He ducked, rolled, and landed on a hover panel that squeaked and whined under his weight. He wobbled dramatically, waved at her, and added, and yet somehow still standing. The fight escalated, a dizzying ballet of sparks, dust, and improvised moves. The human used every available element of the environment: dangling wires, loose crates, even the occasional small explosion from damaged machinery. She lunged, spun, and slashed, each motion calculated, precise, and lethal, yet every swing was countered by ingenuity, luck, or sheer absurdity. Humor threaded its way through the tension. He made quips as he dodged, commented on her technique mid-spin, and occasionally threw in exaggerated gestures that would have been comical if the stakes were not so high. At one point, she lunged for what she hoped would be a decisive strike. He tripped over a cable, stumbled into a pile of scrap, and accidentally kicked a device that discharged a burst of compressed air. She was blown backward, hair whipping, ears flicking in irritation, and dust clung to her green skin like glitter. He landed nearby, panting, brushing sand from his jacket, and gave a thumbs up. "Air conditioning," he said with a grin. "Free of charge." Even as frustration mounted, her respect grew. This human was more than luck and chaos. He anticipated, adapted, and leveraged every opportunity, even turning mistakes into advantage. The colony ruins, the scattered machinery, the crumbling structures. They became props in an unplanned theater where every move, every dodge, and every slip contributed to the unfolding performance. Her lethal precision collided with his chaotic creativity in a dance that was both infuriating and exhilarating. "Enough games," she said, advancing cautiously, ears flicking to detect his next movement. "This ends now." "Games are basically my life philosophy," he replied cheerfully, perched on a loose beam, crouched, ready to spring. "But I guess we could call it a duel instead." The warrior swung her blade, but he countered by using a nearby energy conduit as a springboard, flipping over her head and kicking a crate that sent a chain reaction of sparks and small explosions across the floor. She rolled to avoid the flying debris, landed in a crouch, and couldn't suppress a short laugh, sharp and incredulous. "This is exhausting," she admitted, voice tight but edged with amusement. He grinned, rolling forward and extending a hand as if offering a truce mid-combat. "Exhausting is good. Means you're alive, right? Also, it's fun to see your expressions. Priceless, really." The suns hung low now, casting long shadows that twisted and stretched across the ruined colony. Dust swirled around them like a veil, mixing with sparks and faint plumes of smoke from shattered machinery. Each breath they took was heavy, each movement a calculated risk, and yet the duel carried with it a strange, almost playful rhythm. The warrior alien woman found herself laughing despite the danger, every swing and counter a mixture of lethal precision and comedic timing, while the human's relentless improvisation kept her off balance and constantly adapting. "You are impossible," she muttered, stepping back to catch her breath. "And somehow remarkably effective." "Effective is my middle name," he said, pointing to himself with mock pride, though he was clearly too winded to do much else. "Well, not literally. My middle name's actually Harold, but effective fits better." She shook her head, ears flicking with irritation and grudging amusement. For all her training, all her skills honed across countless battles, she had never encountered an opponent like this, unpredictable, absurd, endlessly resilient, and annoyingly clever. Sparks danced across the sand from their clashing weapons. Dust rose in turbulent plumes, and the ruins around them seemed to hum in acknowledgement of the extraordinary contest. "Perhaps," she said at last, blade lowered slightly, "I underestimated humans." "I told you," he replied with a grin, leaning on a crate and waving dismissively. "We're full of surprises and jokes, mostly jokes, honestly." The suns dipped closer to the horizon, bathing the desert in orange and gold. The warrior alien's green skin shimmered in the fading light, black hair tousled and streaked with sand, long ears twitching in irritation and anticipation. Across the ruin-strewn battlefield, the human opponent stood poised, grin wide, dust-covered and unbroken, ready to continue a duel that had become as much about wit, improvisation, and laughter as it was about combat. And somewhere between the sparks, the sand, and the absurdity, the warrior felt the beginnings of respect, and a begrudging recognition that the fight was far from over, and far more entertaining than she had ever imagined. The twin suns had begun their slow descent, painting the jagged horizon of Karo's 9 in streaks of molten gold and crimson, casting long shadows that twisted across the dusty ruins of the abandoned mining colony. The warrior alien woman crouched atop a toppled crate, black hair plastered to her forehead, green skin glinting with sweat and sand, long ears twitching at the faintest vibration in the air. Sparks danced along her energy blade as she watched the human opponent, dust-coated, hair sticking in chaotic angles, grins still wide despite the exhaustion evident in the curve of his shoulders, survey the battlefield with uncanny calm. For the first time in decades of combat, she felt a gnawing uncertainty that wasn't merely irritation or surprise. It was respect, tinged with incredulity. "You've managed to turn my precision into what?" she muttered under her breath, swiping at a stray dust cloud that had drifted into her face. Her ears twitched as though trying to catch an answer from the wind itself. The human rolled forward with a mock flourish, kicking a piece of scrap metal that clattered into a hover panel, sending sparks flying like fireworks. "Performance art," he said cheerfully. "I call it asterisk improvised human genius with a dash of flair. Critics love it." The warrior growled, though the sound was half amusement, half frustration. She launched herself at him with renewed intensity, energy blade arcing in lethal sweeps, the desert sand erupting under each footfall. He ducked, rolled, swung from a dangling cable, and somehow ended up on a raised platform, pointing at her with one finger like a gunslinger in an old Holovid. "You're dramatic," he quipped, "and dramatic is, well, manageable if you're careful." She hissed, spinning midair to strike, but he was already gone, ducking behind a partially collapsed structure. When she landed, a crate toppled toward her feet, too fast to dodge entirely, but she caught it mid-fall, tossing it aside with a grunt. Sparks flew from the energy blade as it met the edge of a metal panel, sending arcs of electricity into the sand. How are you still standing?" she demanded, ears flicking in irritation. "I told you," he said, dusting sand from his jacket and giving her a theatrical bow. "Humans are annoyingly stubborn, and lucky, very lucky. Sometimes both at the same time." The warrior's lips pressed into a thin line. She had trained her entire life to anticipate and dominate, to read an opponent's moves before they happened, and yet here she was, being outmaneuvered by a creature who seemed part improviser, part luck machine, and entirely unpredictable. Her pride throbbed like a pulse in her temples, but buried beneath the frustration was a begrudging admiration. He was clever, creative, and audacious, qualities she had once dismissed in humans as inconsequential. "Enough games," she growled, taking a cautious step forward. "The battle will end now." The human tilted his head, balancing on a wobbly beam like some daring acrobat. "Games are life, but sure, let's call it finale." He winked. "And I like finales that include dramatic lighting. See." He gestured toward the sun, now dipping low enough to cast their elongated shadows across the ruins, turning every dust plume into a miniature firestorm of color. With a roar, she lunged, blade humming with deadly intent. He dove, rolling beneath her strike and kicking a crate that shot across the floor like a projectile. She leaped to the side, narrowly avoiding the impact, and the crate exploded in a shower of sparks as it hit a malfunctioning energy panel. The human flipped backward, landing on a pile of scrap metal and extending a hand toward her in mock surrender. "Is it too late to call a truce?" he asked with a grin. "Do you think I'm joking?" She snapped, voice low and dangerous, though her ears flicked with reluctant amusement. He rolled toward her again, grabbing a dangling cable and swinging like some daredevil. "Nope," he said cheerfully. "And yet, here I am. Very much alive, very much unscathed-ish." Her eyes narrowed. She lunged once more, faster than before, a blur of green and black. He ducked under the blade and somehow twisted a reflective panel into position, bouncing the energy arc past him and into a crate, which erupted in sparks. She blinked, ears flicking, green skin flushed, and for the first time she laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound that echoed across the ruins. "Ridiculous human," she muttered. "Infuriating and effective." The battle continued, a dizzying, chaotic symphony of sparks, dust, improvised weapons, and unrelenting humor. Every strike, every swing, every calculated feint met with ingenuity, improvisation, or sheer chance. He turned a collapsed panel into a springboard, used a malfunctioning energy conduit as a slingshot, and even managed to trip over his own boots in a way that somehow sent a hovering crate spinning into the path of her next strike. She leapt aside, hair whipping, energy blade humming, and muttered, "You are maddening." "And I aim to be," he said, brushing sand from his jacket again, grin wide. "Also, someone's got to keep you on your toes. You were getting bored." For a moment, she paused, blade lowered slightly. The human had not just survived. He had adapted, learned, and in some bizarre way, tamed her fury without ever intending to. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, an unfamiliar sensation, respect, admiration, and something that bordered on fondness. "Perhaps I misjudged humans," she said, voice low, ears twitching as she stepped back to catch her breath. "We often dismiss your kind as weak, yet you have resilience, ingenuity, humor." "Thanks," he said, wiping a smear of sand from his cheek. "I like to think of it as charm and survival instinct, plus a flair for the dramatic." The warrior alien studied him, green eyes glinting in the twilight. He was battered, scratched, and dust-coated, but unbroken. He had turned her precision, skill, and confidence into a dance of chaos, yet emerged standing, grinning, still ready for another round if necessary. She realized, in a way she hadn't before, that strength wasn't just measured by skill or speed. It was measured by adaptability, creativity, and the courage to face a foe even when the odds seemed absurdly against you. "I underestimated you," she admitted finally, lowering her blade fully. "Not again." "Underestimating humans is practically a hobby," he said, leaning against a crate and wincing slightly. "But I forgive you, just this once." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of sparking machinery and the whisper of wind over sand. The battle was over, but something deeper had shifted. The warrior alien had learned, grudgingly and with humor, that arrogance could be countered by wit, overconfidence by resilience, and that even the deadliest warrior could be humbled by ingenuity and unexpected courage. "You fought well," she said finally, stepping closer, ears flicking with a hint of playfulness now. "Better than most of your kind would dare." "And you," he replied, grinning despite the dust and sweat, "are dramatic." Terrifying, powerful, and dramatic, a real showstopper. She let a small, rare smile curve her lips, black hair glinting, green skin glimmering, long ears twitching in satisfaction. She nodded. "Perhaps we both learned something." Lesson 1. "Humans are annoyingly persistent," he said, gesturing at himself with mock pride. "Lesson 2, even the most confident warrior must adapt," she said, eyes glinting, and for the first time humor threaded naturally through her voice. "And perhaps enjoy a little chaos." The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the colony in shadow streaked with molten light. Dust settled, sparks faded, and the silence of the ruins returned, now carrying a faint undertone of laughter, mutual respect, and the sense that something extraordinary had passed between them. Two opponents had clashed, learned, and changed. One discovering that unpredictability and humor could be as powerful as skill. The other discovering that even the most chaotic human could teach a warrior the value of humility, ingenuity, and wit. As the last rays of light touched the desert, the warrior alien lowered her blade completely. Black hair tousled, green skin smeared with dust, long ears flicking with thoughtfulness. She looked at the human, standing tall, grin intact, and nodded once. "This ends well," she said. "For now," he replied, brushing dust from his jacket, "but I'd call it a tie if you don't mind." She smirked, lifting a hand briefly, and for the first time in a long time let herself laugh, not in triumph, not in irritation, but in genuine amusement. The battle had ended, but the journey of respect, understanding, and the unlikeliest of alliances had only begun. And in the ruins of Karo's 9, amidst dust, sparks, and fading sunlight, both knew that the galaxy was a little wider, a little stranger, and a little more alive because of this extraordinary, improbable duel. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the colony in shadow streaked with molten light. Dust settled, sparks faded, and the silence of the ruins returned, now carrying a faint undertone of laughter, mutual respect, and the sense that something extraordinary had passed between them. Two opponents had clashed, learned, and changed, one discovering that unpredictability and humor could be as powerful as skill, the other discovering that even the most chaotic human could teach a warrior the value of humility, ingenuity, and wit. As the last rays of light touched the desert, the warrior alien lowered her blade completely. Black hair tousled, green skin smeared with dust, long ears flicking with thoughtfulness. She looked at the human, standing tall, grin intact, and nodded once. "This ends well," she said. "For now," he replied, brushing dust from his jacket, "but I'd call it a tie if you don't mind." She smirked, lifting a hand briefly, and for the first time in a long time let herself laugh, not in triumph, not in irritation, but in genuine amusement. The battle had ended, but the journey of respect, understanding, and the unlikeliest of alliances had only begun. And in the ruins of Karo's 9, amidst dust, sparks, and fading sunlight, both knew that the galaxy was a little wider, a little stranger, and a little more alive because